All right, cool. Let's kick it off. Welcome to Sprint Demos, Sprint 37, Fleet 4.65.0, code name Rubidium. And I really don't have a pun for Rubidium. It's not a very punny element. It does spontaneously ignite in air, so that's kind of cool. And we'll leave it with that. Handing it over to have some really exciting stuff, real feature packed release to show you today. So handing it over to George and the MDM product group for their features.
All righty, we're gonna start off light though with Gabe Hernandez showing some copy updates.
Hey guys, share my screen. Yeah, so this was a really quick story. Let me read it to you real quick. So the user story was, as an IT admin about to transfer. Oh, sorry. Am I sharing my screen? Can you all see my screen?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so as an IT admin about to transfer or delete hosts, I want to know that disk encryption keys will be deleted so that I can write down the disk encryption key before I transfer or delete. Basically, the issue was the messaging around disk encryption keys was kind of non-existent when you were trying to delete or transfer a host. As you can see here, this was the old message. There's no mention of disk encryption keys. So the fix was just a copy change. So I'm just going to show you the changes we made. For deleting hosts, there's just a couple of changes around taking into account the number of hosts. So in this example, this will remove the record for one host. And then here at the end of the sentence, it mentions not just unlock pins, but also disk encryption keys. Same thing, but for multiple hosts, and the same with disk encryption keys being mentioned. So these two are for deleting, and it's the same thing for transferring. It just mentions here at the end, the disk encryption key is deleted if you transfer the host to a team that doesn't have disk encryption enabled. So yeah, that's it, basically. Any questions on that one?
All righty, thank you so much. Next up, I'm going to be showing off what Martin worked on. This actually spanned a couple of sprints, and this is laying the groundwork for guaranteed order of execution and a couple of upcoming features to make this even easier to manage going forward. But here's the original story: is as an IT admin, I want upcoming activities to run as listed and originally had scoped also be cancelable, but that'll be coming at a later date so that I have the ability to prioritize an important action to happen first. So the whole point of this is that previously, on previous releases, MDM commands, scripts executions, software installs, queries, all of them would happen individually on their own tables. They would all happen in whatever order that table happened to deal with them in. So your scripts would run in the order your scripts happened. The software installs would happen in the order of your software installs, but if you ran both 3 scripts and 3 software installs at the same time, you had no idea which one was going to happen in what order. So this is providing the groundwork that now all of these will happen in the order that they show. And here is the demo. I believe I did not share sound. One moment. All right, let's try this one more time.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick test. Pretty much all features of the unified queue. So first of all, the setup experience flow for the Mac Mini. I have 2 hosts here, a Mac and a Windows one, and they're both in different teams. The Mac is in no team, the Windows box is in team A. So what I'll do is I already set up the setup experience stuff, so it will install three apps. Monkey, the Managed Software Center, Postman, which is a managed app. The Monkey is a custom package, and Treo, which is a VPP app. So it's a good test of all possible app types. And then it will run the max script long script. So this is for the setup experience. I also have a failing of policy that always fails. It just selects one from where false, so it's always failing. And it's configured to install software bear, which is a VPP app, and run a script, macOS script, when it's failing on host. So the Mac host will fail those. And then the rest of the tests will be more manual triggering of installations and running scripts. So I will first start by completing the setup experience for the Mac and see how it goes. So the Mac is now enrolling. It's in the setup flow and waiting on the setup experience screen. You can see that it has already reported the failing policy. So let's see the activities. We can see that the macOS script, which was enqueued by the failed policy, is already executed. And it's waiting on Postman, Monkey, and the Bear app. The Bear one is the one that's enqueued from the failed policy. So this is one thing that we plan on improving in a future iteration, so that the setup experience does not allow any other execution while it's still pending completion. But for now, when there's something like automatic software installs and script executions via failed policy, it can go in between the setup experience steps. But one thing that's important to note is that the setup experience activities are higher priority. So when they are at the same time as some other stuff in the queue, they will go top of the queue immediately. So that's why we have, so now it has finished installing Postman, and the macOS script that was already executed. So now it's installing Monkey and then Bear, and then it will complete the other steps for the setup experience. So let's see how it goes. So it has completed installing Monkey, the Bear app triggered via the failed policy, Treo, the VPP app. So now the only thing that's remaining is the script. That's the last step in the setup experience. And then everything will have been completed, even the failed policy stuff. So it's looking good so far. Everything is running through the queue as expected. Okay, so everything is now done on the Mac. It has fully enrolled and is now in MDM. So you can see the past activities, like the 4 steps from the setup experience and the 2 steps from the failed policy. Everything is there. There's nothing anymore in the upcoming queue. So now let's move on to the Windows host and do some tests with scripts and setup and software installs. So yeah, I have created some scripts that are associated with this theme, this host theme. So I will run a script like the long one, this one. And then I will move on to install software. Available for install, FileZilla. Let's go with FileZilla. And then some other scripts. WinScript, the third one, .ps. This one, and then install hello.exe. Okay, so now I have enqueued four items. So if we look here, you can see in the upcoming queue, it's in the right order. So first the long script, FileZilla, the short script, and hello.exe. And while this is running, I will also run a synchronous script execution from the terminal. So you won't see it in the video because my terminal is not part of this, but I will run the one that's too long and that it never finishes. So, well, it times out. It will finish eventually, but it times out. So let me type this. I will actually pause and come back. Okay, so I have also a script running synchronously. So if we come back here, look at activities. So the first one, the long one, did run on the host. So it sleeps for 120 seconds and prints something. And it's now installing FileZilla. It will run another script, run hello.exe, install hello.exe, and run my synchronous script, which should time out. It doesn't show a name because the synchronous script is anonymous. So the order is correct. Everything looks good so far. So FileZilla finished installing successfully. So now it's running. Oh, it has already ran the short script, finished successfully, just print something out. So now it's installing the exe, and then it will execute the synchronous script. That should time out, as I mentioned. So I'll pause and show the results then.
Alrighty, so that's the unified queue in action. I know, incredibly exciting, and apologies for the soft audio. Next up, we have Sarah showing us some new fancy cert info on host details.
All right, here we go. So our story begins with, as an IT admin on the host details page, want to see a list of certificates on my Mac OS, iOS, and iPadOS hosts, so I can understand if a missing and expired certificate is the reason why an end user can't connect to the corporate network. This is a mission critical MDM replacement requirement, and let's see how it looks in Fleet. So we have an iPad host enrolled in Fleet here. And if we scroll down to the page, we'll see a list of some certificates that were surfaced. And we can view certificate details and see, some things like when is it going to be expiring. We also get an indicator here of the health of the certificate from an expiration perspective, with different status icons for different durations between the how much time is left before the certificate expires. We also have it available for Mac OS hosts. You can see, what that looks like here. It's a little bit farther down the page because we offer a few more vitals for Mac OS hosts. And it's available on the My Device page as well. What's happening under the hood, we're using OS Query for Mac OS hosts to surface certificates from the keychain. We don't capture them all for Mac OS hosts, but you can always use the certificates table and a custom OS query to get more information if you need on the Mac OS hosts. And for our iPad and iOS hosts, we are making use of the MDM commands to list certificates. So here's some more information on that. That'll do it.
All righty, thank you, Sarah. And lastly, we've got Victor. This upcoming feature is still behind a feature flag, so scoped to possibly change a little bit in the upcoming iterations, but very excited for him to be showing off enrolling your Android devices.
Okay, thank you, George. So this was a team effort. The whole team kind of worked on parts of this feature. So let's jump in to the story. As an IT admin, I want to invite end users to enroll BYOD Android hosts so that I can enforce settings on end user devices. They can access organization resources and tools. So this is a customer commitment and definitely kind of a maturity feature for our MDM offering. And like George mentioned, this is behind the feature flag, so it will be available in dog food shortly. All right, so if I go to host team and I click add hosts, and I click on Android, it'll tell me that I need to turn it on. So I could jump to where I turn it on directly, or I can simply go to settings, integrations, mobile device management, and there's a turn on button right here. So let's go ahead and turn it on. it'll do a pop-up, and then I can type in, looks like a bug in on the Google side, that it's obscuring my address. Kind of UI note here, when I click sign up, it actually opens up a new tab here, which is a little strange. I need to do this because while I'm doing the sign-in flow, we're actively monitoring the server-side events, whether Android Enterprise has been turned on. So I'll get started. Sprint demo. Expect this will change once we become an official EMM provider for Android MDM. And I can fill this in, but this is optional. Confirm. Complete registration. So it's going to register, create this MDM enterprise for us, and then it's going to call back to Fleet. And eventually this page will close itself, something we still need to turn on. And on this side, you saw this magic happen where the page immediately went back to settings with MDM turned on. And then if we go back to edit, we will see that it has an enterprise ID, which could be used for debug, because we as Fleet will be managing all the enterprises. All right, so let's go ahead and enroll a device. So I can go back to our hosts, add hosts, Android, it gives me a link. If I open it up in a browser, it'll tell me that I need to use an iPhone, iPad, or Android device. But if I open it up on Android, this page comes up, enroll your Android device to Fleet. I'll go ahead and enroll and go through the enrollment flow. One note about while that's going on, let me show you the activity feed. Parallel demos. So as you can see, we have an activity feed here that Gandalf turned on MDM. He's been turning off on and off Android MDM for quite a while. And another note is we've implemented kind of a common feature where if this Gandalf user was deleted while we were enabling MDM, his information is saved in a standard way, so that in a separate table, so that can be reused in the future for this kind of situations where we want to keep track of a user for activity or other auditing purposes, even if that user has been deleted. Okay, so Android is enrolled. I think we're still talking about the UI here. We probably maybe want to hide this page, maybe display something different on it. But I can see on the device that it's enrolled by going here, swiping, I never remember, up or down. Oh, swiping up, and I see my work profile here. We'll go back to hosts. We go back to our team, Sprint demo team, and we see this host in this team. So we are able to assign the host to the specific team that we need. This page still needs some work. We're still working on this page. We will have disk space data. If we go back to all hosts for all teams, and we can filter by Android, so we do have the Android label, so that's working. I guess the last thing to show is turning it off. So if I go here, I can turn off MDM. There's a pop-up. I can turn it off. If I turn it off, the host will still be there, so the host is not deleted, but it will not be getting any more updates. All right, that's it. Back to Luke.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, MDM team. Really excited about all those features. I know certificates is big for some customers that are waiting on that. And of course, Android is a big OKR in Q1. Also closes the loop for Fleet on being able to enroll all common device types. I just like to say it, Android, iPad, iPhone, Mac, Windows, Linux, Chromebooks, come a long way. So really, really exciting to see every time we support a new device. Next over to orchestration product group and Sharon.
Thank you, Luke. And we'll start with a feature that disables everything that has control with GitOps. So there is an ability to block everything that has the ability to control it with GitOps, so it won't be overridden. Let's see the video.
Jacob here with a quick demo of the new GitOps mode. So the user story for this feature is, as a GitOps user, I want to access the Fleet UI in a mode that disables any kind of edit you can do in GitOps, so that I can avoid my work being undone the next time fleetctl GitOps runs. And we have this new integrations change management settings section that allows us to enable GitOps mode. Now when we enable GitOps mode, we need to specify a repository URL for GitOps. And let's use example.com. And the first thing you'll notice is we've got an indicator in the top right here now, letting the user know that we're in GitOps mode. They can learn more about Fleet GitOps. That link will actually go somewhere once this is released. And then we'll notice that we've got a number of gated areas of the UI, such as for managing enroll secrets. This is a feature that can be managed with GitOps, so in GitOps mode, we're not going to let the user in the UI manage it. This is to prevent any kind of confusion about if they set a setting in the UI and then GitOps is run as the user story specified. Their settings from the UI will get overwritten, so this prevents confusion around that. And you'll notice in these tooltips, this YAML link links to the repository URL that we set in the setting. And this is going to apply all over our UI, so disk encryption, custom settings, all over the place. Just to give one more example, Teams page, team settings, all of this stuff is managed with GitOps, and so in GitOps mode, we're not going to allow the user to manage them with the UI. And let's just turn it off, and we'll see that the normal UI functionality is restored. So now we've got access to our usual buttons, etc. Jacob here.
So that was the GitOps mode in UI. And next we have Scott. Scott, please take it.
All right, I got a couple of things here. The first one is kind of a somewhat related story, or at least it touches the GitOps stuff a little bit. Let me get over to the right page. I think this is the one. Okay, so add pagination to automations modal on policies and disable manage automations when not available. So the story is, as an IT admin, I want to see an instruction tooltip on manage automation explaining when policy and vulnerability automation can be set so I know what to expect. guess this user story actually didn't explain the part about pagination, but the other part of this was adding pagination to the modals when you're setting automation for policies. So I'll demonstrate both of those. So first up, if you're on all teams, before this manage automations link just wouldn't appear at all. But now in the spirit of showing people what they can do if they just have the right settings, it is disabled, and when you hover, it'll tell you that you need to add a policy in order to uh, get this set up. If you're on a team that has no policies, the slightly different tooltip saying, just explaining about inherited policies as well. And then if you're on a team that has policies, then you can open the dropdown as usual. So that's the tooltip and disabling part of it. The pagination part was pretty interesting because previously on this page, you can have many policies, obviously, and whenever you would open up one of these modals to do some automation, it would only show the policies that were on the current page. So if I'm, looking at policies 21 through 40, then those would be the only ones that I could set up in this page, which was confusing for some users and led to them having to go back and forth to this and keep switching pages and going back to the modal. So we implemented pagination in all of these using a new pagination list component that we can use elsewhere. So also all four of these different modals used to use kind of their own bespoke code for doing this pop-up and doing this list. And now they're all showing that they're using the same code. You can select whatever you need. It'll still disable if you don't have the right thing selected, and it will, save your selections going back and forth in different pages. So if I go back, you can see the things are still selected as you'd expect. Once I have everything validated, I can save. And if I go back there, I can see that it saved my selections as we expect. And that's active for all four of these. These also, just incidentally, are under the GitOps mode change that Jacob just demonstrated. So if you go to any of these with GitOps mode on, it's going to tell you that you need to manage it in the YAML. And I think there was a comment in the chat about the use of the URL. The URL is to drive this link here. So it's kind of showing where to go to update your settings in GitOps mode. So that is the pagination and policies. The other one I wanted to do a quick demo of was this update to our makefile to add a help system to it, and also this FDM command. But to demonstrate that, I think I need to share more so that y'all can see my terminal. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, so the purpose of this was to, as part of our commitment to improving our developer tooling, is we're, after a lot of discussion, kind of decided that we have this make file that has, a lot of our tooling in it already. We don't want to completely reinvent the wheel and move away from that necessarily, but there are some drawbacks to using make as our primary tooling. And one of them is that it is not very robust when it comes to help, like what commands are available, what you can do with those commands. So I implemented a system in the make file that allows us to add help and more descriptions to all the commands. And I created a wrapper command called FDM that allows us to call the make file in a more idiomatic fashion. So I'll show what that means. So if you just do FDM, just a regular command, FDM help. This is just a wrapper around the make file, so it'll show you the general commands. This isn't actually by far the full list of targets in our make file, but this is the ones that have the help tags associated with them. And what we can do with this is probably make like an advanced section for less uh, frequently used commands. But what's kind of cool about this is now we can do help on specific commands. So if we do FDM help lint, for example, we can get, kind of regular Linux style help. It'll tell you how to use the command, what it does, what the available options are. And unlike using make, where it's kind of hard to add arguments to your commands, we can now do like make, or sorry, FDM lint go, and it will run just the go linter or FDM lint JS to run the JS linter. If we look at like FDM help build, it has these options in here, which you can, again, do this with make. You could do make builds and it would be like go build race enabled equals true or something like that, which is just not the way you would normally call commands in the command line. But now we can do this and it will translate that into make for us. Again, it's just a wrapper around make. And to demonstrate that real quick, if I do make help, it shows the same commands listed, just using make. We can do make help command equals build, and it'll give us that same output, and it'll even give you like the options that you would use in make. So completely a translator, but the goal is to, again, get better help, and also just keep consolidating commands into here. And as we do more of that, like some updates to the snapshot tool that are coming to address some of the migration issues that Ian and some other folks surfaced. Dante is working on an awesome tough tool that will kind of wrap some of the scripts to make it easier to set up your tough repository locally. All those things are going to have arguments to them that would make using them just directly from make a little bit arduous. So it's again just trying to get us a tool that is more idiomatic and easier to use for everybody. There's probably some comments, but let me see. Oh, the comments are all about the white terminal background. Hey man, you gotta be able to see stuff, I guess.
Awesome contributor experience improvement, aside from the controversy surrounding a white terminal window. Yeah, really excited to give this a shot and continue to build on it.
Thank you, Scott. And Lucas can't attend, so we have one video for all these things. I'll present it in the improvement stuff, and we have some features in the OS query. So back to you now, Luke.
Awesome. Thank you, orchestration, Team Orca. Next up, we have software product group. Over to Tim Lee.
All right, hello, everybody. We're going to start off with Ian presenting VPP automatic installs.
All right. Thank you to Rachel for building the front end on this one. As an IT admin, I want to automatically install an App Store app without writing a policy so I can save time when installing apps across many hosts. In Fleet 463, we shipped policy support for installation of VPP apps. And in Fleet 465, we're making that automatic for macOS hosts. We're also making some tweaks to FMA policy creation for automatic installs, so it's happening server side rather than client side. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So let's add software here. Despite the team name that you just saw, iOS and iPadOS are not supported for this because we don't run OS query on those platforms, and as a result, don't have the ability to query for policies for auto install. But we do for macOS, so let's get that added. That gives us our Bear app with auto install with the policy query here. Additionally, this added less than a minute ago here is new. We have a database migration to fill in kind of an approximation of those timestamps automatically because we didn't have those on the table before. If you want something potentially more accurate, there is a query in the release notes that will pull timestamps out of the activity feed for this. We didn't include that as automatic because that activity feed table can get rather large, and we didn't want to hold up the migration for folks where the existing quick query was good enough. One other thing here is for fleet maintained. Let me open and inspect Windows so you can see the network traffic. Let's add Cloudflare Warp, have automatic install here, add that. And the important thing here is that this payload now has this automatic install of true rather than needing to supply a policy from client side to get this to work. And as you can see here, we have the auto-generated query. Documentation on this is updated in here, here, and here, and those docs will of course be released when this goes live. All right. Any questions?
Awesome. Thanks, Ian and Rachel, on that one. Next up, we're going to go just do a quick overview here of some of the research done for upcoming roadmap item of fleet maintained apps for Windows. There was a research project here I think may be valuable to show some of the progress and some of the thinking that's going on kind of behind the scenes before we implement this next sprint. There is a public research doc you can peruse anytime you want. The scope here, the initial scope here for this first iteration is you can see a lot of similar titles here. That is purposeful in that we're kind of showing off a lot of the we're showing off the similar titles and not the exact same titles that we have currently for Mac OS. There are some exceptions due to several complications, but other things to note as we move forward is Windows is a little different, right? So we have user scope, we have machine scope, we have different architectures, 32, 64, ARM 64. Those are kind of and also I think Office is a good one to call out as something we're not going to do. This first iteration, there's a lot of complications around Office that we need to unpack, and we will do that in the future. But just know this first iteration, we're going to prefer machine installs if possible. In some cases, like Notion, there is no sense of a machine install. So thanks to Victor and his research on scripts for installation of user installs, we're going to be leveraging that. And all of the apps initially are going to be 64-bit unless, actually, I think it's going to be 64-bit across the board. No, just kidding. There's one 32-bit here on Figma. But feel free to check this out. The other thing we wanted to make sure as we kind of keep scope down is we have a kind of a single source like we do with Homebrew today for app metadata, and we're going to use Winget. Winget's it's a tool maintained by Microsoft, as well as all the app manifests for it. Here's a sample for Brave. This is a lot where the research kind of came from, but as you see, a lot of things here for different architectures, different scopes. So yes, we will be so Winget will be the path we're going to use on this iteration. I heard a question out there. Maybe not. Okay. I'll check the chat after this. And that's all for the software team.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for a little bit of a sneak peek into what's going on with Windows. That's an important OKR, so great to get some insight there. And I know Lucas is also going to be sharing some insight on his research into Microsoft Compliance Partner, which we have cleared, and we're going to start integrating next sprint. That concludes the major features going out with 4.65, but also a lot of important improvements and released bug fixes. So for those, I'm going to start with MDM and hand off to George.
All righty. We'll go ahead and take a look over here. Just got 3 that I'm going to be showing, and then Victor will be showing off his. We've got missing learn more link on Windows MDM enable error. We take a look here. It was reported by Ian that there's an error with no indication on how to fix. There is now a nice nifty, oh, gonna have to scroll. Nice nifty arrow with a learn more link and goes directly to the guide to explain what you need. We've got Windows configuration profiles can't be user scoped. This was a product oversight. I believe we now error correctly that you're not allowed to upload a profile that is user scoped because we didn't have that in the original intention. Must start with device. And then turn on MDM instructions in my device modal need updating. There's been a lot of copy and indication updates to just make it a better experience overall. And feel free to peruse this ticket 23851 if you want to see all the lovely details that everybody added. Alrighty, on to Victor.
Thank you, George. Just to note that we moved our freeze date a little bit. So this sprint, this demo actually has a bit more features than average. So these 2 bug fixes were actually done at the end of last sprint. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So the first one was a customer hit this issue where they tried to use a relative path in their no team YAML. Here's an example of a relative path. The relative path was working in a team YAML, but not the no team YAML. So this is kind of a general pattern where we have some issues specifically with our no team YAML file, which is kind of special and has some special rules. So this has been fixed. So relative paths work now. And just a general note, relative paths should work basically in all GitOps files, and the path should be relative to the location of the file that has the relative path. The other one is also GitOps related. So Alan saw this issue, filed this issue that we were clearing the Bootstrap package and enrollment profile in GitOps, but it was not clearing in dog food. So this is kind of another pattern of issues that we've noticed where we're good at testing that we can apply things with GitOps, we can overwrite things with GitOps, but we don't do so much testing to make sure that once we remove GitOps that the settings go back to defaults. So we have discussed some of these issues in several meetings, and we did add, for the backend people, we did add a few notes about GitOps in our patterns doc, so that we'd be more aware of these issues going forward. That's it for me.
All righty, thank you so much. And I believe back to Luke.
Great. Thank you, MDM. And handing over to, who is next? Orchestration and Sharon for their improvements and released bug fixes.
Thank you. So as I said, Lucas can't attend, so I'll share this video. 1 second, let me see if I can increase it. There we go.
I will talk about these stories that we worked during this sprint. So the TAF repository, you can see here as a big contributor responsible for TAF. I want to know that the timestamp key will be automatically updated before expiration so that I can take time off without worrying about TAF coverage. the goal here is that we have this thing called updates.fleetdm.com. This is what the FleetD agents use to download new updates of FleetD. And there's this thing called timestamp.json, which is sort of, you can think of it as a keep alive. It has to be signed every 2 weeks. And we were doing it manually for some time, but now this will automate that process to do it every week. And again, this is sort of a keep alive so that the clients, the FleetD clients know that, Fleet is continuing the control of the TUF and they can still access the TUF and so on. It's one of the protections on the TUF protocol. And the third item I have here is related to the TUF. Apart from timestamp, we also have four other roles, each with its own responsibilities. We have the root role, the snapshot role, and the targets role, and obviously the one that I mentioned, the timestamp role. And all of these have to be, they have a signature that expires. As I said, like the timestamp expires every 2 weeks. The root role every 1 year, and snapshot, I believe it's like 30 days or so, or even also 1 year. I don't recall, but in any case, we have this automation that will send a warning message to our Slack channel in case when it's about to expire, so that we can plan accordingly on re-signing the keys. Yep, so that was it. Thank you.
And that was from Lucas. Going next to Dante. Dante, please take it.
Hello. Let me just share my screen quickly. So here's the bugs that I squashed this sprint. We have this one, which has come back again. It's there's one endpoint where OS query logs its packs, which unnecessarily unmarshals the same data 3 times. We managed to fix it by putting the a marshaller in the handler instead of in the service layer. That was a pretty easy one. We have this bug where Fleet Desktop for one user was showing up several times due to the way they had configured Fleet to run with certain limitations on CPU usage. So Orbit was getting restarted. This has since been fixed, where now only one instance of Fleet Desktop can run at a time. There was an issue where users who didn't have SMTP configured couldn't use password authentication if the user was not initially configured with password authentication. This has been fixed now. Users will instead be able to always use passwords, but if they try to request a password reset on the login screen, they'll be informed that they can't, and that the admin has to enable SMTP for that to work. This was a very interesting bug. There was a key escrowing error that only happened on French Ubuntu systems due to the way we parse the output of the disk encryption command line output. We resolved this by no longer relying on the localized version of the output, and instead use a automation ready version, which is always in English. There was an issue where metadata URL and metadata info could be set in UI, but not in GitOps, and this has been resolved, so they now act accordingly and both do the exact same thing. This was a minor bug in the UI where scripts, the script edit UI would not match the Figma. And finally, Fleet CTL package, if you're compiling for Windows, didn't work on M1 Max if you're using Wine. This was updated, so now that Fleet will install the correct version of Wine and always use the right executable. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Dante. Next, we have Scott with another list of bugs.
Okay, let's go to the videotape here. So what do I got? Okay, Fleet Desktop on Ubuntu disappears after restarting display server. This was a little niche, but we got a report that if you're on Linux and you have a GNOME desktop and you manually restart the desktop from the terminal, which people do for various reasons, I suppose. That once the desktop comes back up, the Fleet desktop icon doesn't reappear. Fix that using some dbus heuristics. I haven't thought about dbus in a long time, so it was fun to get back into that. But basically, um, it checks in a kind of heuristical way whether the tray icon is still there, and if not, the desktop app just kills itself and relies on Orbit to relaunch the desktop app. Which, depending on what happens to the desktop app, we may or may not want to change that in the future. But for now, this is a good way to get around this issue. UI bug and show query modal for read along query. I don't think I can demo this right now. I don't think I have a query that shows it, but basically it was just truncating when you looked at a query in the pop-up modal that showed the query details. It would cut it off, and now it does not. Used by text wrapping looks odd with tooltip indicator. I have a little demo of this, I guess. If you have a very long email address, we now, first of all, use the nice truncated tooltip, and just have the more here that shows the rest of them. Just a little UI improvement there. And fixed privacy preferences table for Chrome OS. Yes, so I finally got my Chromebook after many false starts to test this out. And yeah, just a quick fix for this privacy preferences table, that if you do a query on it, used to return errors, and now will return you a list of various preferences. And I
Is
think,
that a new release for Chrome?
oh, is that a different? Yeah, I guess it's on a different release schedule, huh? It would be, yeah. It's
Yeah, we'll need to release that. Yeah, that's another release for Chrome.
okay. Well, it was done during this sprint at least. I don't know when it'll get released.
No, that's okay. Okay, thank you, Scott. And last, we have another bug from Jacob. I have no video for that, so I'll just mention there was this inconsistent when you're creating a new policy. The target checkboxes were inconsistently shown or hidden. That was fixed as well. And that's it. Back to you, Luke.
Great. Thank you, orchestration. And last but not least, and then we have some OS query contributions, is software for their improvements and bug fixes.
All right, we're going to start with Ian.
Alrighty. So this is just a quick defaults change PR. We've been seeing some performance issues of trying to do too many things in parallel on the vulnerability counts updates. So we're revising the default concurrency from 5 down to 1. Haziel, I believe, has a few more notes on here on things that he's worked on here, and we'll continue looking at improving performance on the vulnerabilities job. Next, we've got an edge case. In this case, it was a Santa app where we would detect an app name that didn't end in .app, therefore would make up a PKG packages source, which would prevent that software from being inventoried on live hosts. That is now fixed where if you upload apps like that, then they're just going to get dropped into the apps source and everything will work. There's a CVE 2023-48795. For some reason, NVD says that this affects PowerShell, and then it gives a completely bogus version of PowerShell that up to like 11.1, and that's not actually a valid version of PowerShell. So we've added an exclusion for PowerShell specifically for this. The vulnerability is actually OpenSSH related. And depending on how you, for example, upgraded from MySQL 5.7 to 8.0, you might have dropped the default collation and character set at the database level that we had added quite a while ago. So added a migration to add that back, fix tables that had gotten collated wrong because MySQL 8 has a different default collation that doesn't match with the one that we applied in most places, and also retroactively fix migrations to where new fleet instances that are running migrations for the first time rather than existing ones that have been around for a while will get those character sets applied, character sets and collations applied at the table level the right way the first time and not skipping anything. And that is it for me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That last one was stopping or preventing a customer upgrade, I believe. So glad to see that one go through. Next up, Haziel.
Hey, folks. All right. So first up, this was an issue with the versions that we show for a VPP app being out of date. So when we send the MDM command to install the app, it always just installs the latest version. But we pull some metadata into Fleet about the app, including the version for display purposes and whatnot. And so then that version could get out of date. So the fix for this was to just add a kind of simple cron job that goes and queries the Apple API that has this version information and update the metadata we have stored in Fleet with the latest versions. So this happens every hour, and yeah, should help with reducing confusion around which version is going to get installed if you install the app. Next, we have kind of a combo like what Ian was just mentioning. This is like related to what Ian was just mentioning around the concurrency for the Fleet for the vulnerabilities processing job. This was the fix for this was just a check to make sure that we don't pass in anything less than 1, and if it's less than or equal to 0, then make sure that we set it to 1. That way, there's always at least one thread. If you try to use 0 threads, it's going to cause problems. So there's a bit of cleanup there. Related to that, though, using that higher concurrency led to some big spikes in resource usage for the database specifically. And so after some tinkering and thanks to all the team that helped with just reading logs and looking at AWS dashboards and whatnot, but we were able to add a couple of indexes to some of the hot tables in the vulnerabilities processing code path. And so those seem to have helped. We've been sort of monitoring this and keeping an eye on it, but yeah, the hope is that those indexes are going to speed up the process and keep it from knocking the database over. Then the next one we have was something that we noticed where adding a VPP app, if you already had the Windows version of that app installed, or not installed, but like added to Fleet, and then you add the VPP version of it. For example, I think we noticed this for Evernote. The VPP one that you would add would show up as a Windows app, and this was just a small tweak to the query that we use to create a software title. It was accidentally pulling in the existing Windows one when it should skip it if it's not Mac OS. So that should be fixed. And then finally, this was it's required a deep dive, or a bit of a deep dive into how CPEs, which are the identifiers for software that we use for vulnerability processing, and CVEs, which are the identifiers for the vulnerabilities themselves. How all those get put together, there's with just like how many different types of software there are, how many software vendors there are, things kind of we have to deal with a lot of edge cases, a lot of special cases, and so Python was one of those where sometimes for a pre-release version of Python, sometimes the pre-release part, like alpha or beta or release candidate, would be put into the correct part of the CPE, and sometimes it wouldn't. And so we have to like do a bunch of sort of work around that to make sure that we're ingesting things correctly and using the right CPEs, and then finding the right vulnerabilities based on those CPEs. So our CPE calculation basically is a little bit smarter now for Python. Yeah, we'll continue to keep an eye on how we process CPEs, and keep making that process smarter to keep catching more vulnerabilities. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Next up, Constantine.
You guys, sure, real quick. So this particular issue, we were having issues with the Sembar library, and it was incorrectly parsing a lot of software versions and vulnerability versions. Obviously, software and vulnerabilities can follow the Sembar semantics, but don't always follow the Sembar semantics. So we switched over to using the NVD tools library instead, which is a lot more forgiving. And that has proved to increase the amount of resolved inversions we get for vulnerabilities. Did some work on GitHub Actions on the vulnerabilities and the NVD repositories to properly alert when things fail. And then also the longest feature ever, or longest issue ever, is getting Python packages to show up in OS query from user directories. This is the second part of the ticket. The first was to modify OS query, and now we are actually making use of this query in Fleet. So we will soon see Python packages from user directories showing up in the software tab. So that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Next up is Rachel, who is mobile, and we're going to see how this goes.
Ready. Happy Friday. It's in here. All right, so I have a few bug fixes that got in the sprint. I'm going to go over the ones that were working as intended first, and then the styling improvements. So this first one was a doozy where basically when you deleted a software off of no team, it would kick you back to all teams. So that was now fixed, which leads directly into the second bug, which turned out to be 6 bugs, in which case we were dropping the team ID off of various links. See this here, and the TLDR is we did not have a one helper function to roll them all to build our links throughout our app, and so I went through and compared 67 files and updated all of the links to use one helper function that will always work. And so now we have an issue. And then the third one on here is something that Janice found while trying to delete a policy software installation automation, in which case the policy was saying that it successfully updated, even though there was errors on the back end and it actually didn't update. So it turns out incorrectly calling multiple APIs and working with the designers, we now have a new pattern that we're going to be applying to the same bug that is on the scripts page, and that is going to be rendering multiple flash messages when we have multiple APIs called with multiple errors. And the iteration is to limit that to 5 errors currently and see how it goes. So that is now fixed on the manage automations for install software, and that's going to be added on Monday for the scripts, since Janice also found it broken on the scripts page. So those are the 3 things not working as intended. We have 2 styling improvement things. The first one is just a lot of stuff on the users page for Teams just was not looking right. So the first thing was, if you had a really long name and you were an API user, that API badge would get cut off. Our actions drop down is not aligned right, so that's now aligned right. Also, if you made the screen a lot smaller, your host little pill count here would move on to 2 lines. So that's now line. And then finally, this is a part of a larger project of aligning our components between Figma, the code, the unit tests, and Storybook, where you can view the components without actually having to build the whole website. And we currently only worked on 5 different components. So the tab navigation should look a lot spiffier and feel a lot better working with in both design and dev. The little target chip selector when you're selecting a target on the live query or live policy page, info banners, drop downs, and inputs should all feel a lot cleaner and be aligned everywhere. And that's a part of this larger issue where we are, as a fleet contributor, we want to be able to use the styles in the fleet design system and have them reflected in the user interface. So that is it.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, and that's it for the software team.
Okay, awesome. Great, great work, everybody. We have cool to see more OS Query Core contributions. I'm gonna hand off to Sharon to introduce those.
Thank you, Luke. And we'll start with Dante. Dante added some stuff to the opt sources table in OS Query. Take it, please.
All right. Give me 1 second. There it is.
We can't hear the.
No audio.
Gotcha. Let me fix that up for you real quick. I don't know how I select to share audio every time and it keeps unsharing. All right, there we go. Hey, so this was actually a feature request that came in disguised as a bug report. The issue was the app sources table on Ubuntu was not returning any of the app sources. As you can see here, they're calling select star from app sources and nothing was getting returned. What turns out the issue was here is that Debian and Debian-derived distributions recently went from a format of app source looking like this, where it was a single line per source, to a multi-line format, and OS Query did not yet support this. The way it used to be formatted was you'd have the repo type, deb, the source URL, the suite, which is what the target of the distribution is. So in this case, it's the bookworm, and then the components. So these will be main, non-free firmware, like the subtypes of things that are maintained in this repository. And they went to this format here, where the type is at the top. Here's URIs, and there can be multiple suites. This means we're going from something where there's 1 line per source to a matrix of sources, because you can have multiple URIs and multiple suites per block. This meant having to expand OS Query's ability to read app sources from parsing per line to parsing per block and outputting a matrix of sources. This is what that looks like in production. Here we have a OS query build inside of a container. You can see here we're inside of OS query. If we look at our sources, at sources.list, you can see the main sources.list is empty, and that the new sources are in the directory. You can see here it only has this type of source. It doesn't have the single line style anymore. However, if we now run OS query, we can see that we get exactly what we want here. It's a bit hard to tell. Let me, there we go. You can see it returns all the information we'd expect. The name, the source, the base URI, the release, and all the other things like architectures and components. You can see though, very interestingly, there's only 2 blocks here, but we get 4 sources. That's because this source has multiple suites in the same source. Thanks.
Thank you, Dante. And let me share my screen quickly. A few more things. First, release version 5.16 of OS Query is currently on Edge, on our Edge, and it will be moved to stable next week. Nice thing about it, statistics, is that 6 out of 9 issues were contributed by FleetDM, so that's nice. And as I said, move to stable next week. And from here, let's let Scott continue. Take it, please.
Yeah, and those bottom 2, I think I've talked about before. They got into this release finally, but it was just that top one, which was an issue with Fedora. When you ran a certain query, it would return errors because, well, the query would return errors because it's a query that really only works on Debian, and then it would fail because the way that it was set up, we didn't have permission to actually write the error logs. So it was a quick fix there to just get that. Well, I don't know about quick, but it was a fix there to get those permissions correct so that we could write the error logs and clear that up. So definitely not the same amount of work that Dante had to put in this time for OS Query, but every little bit. And that's it for me.
Okay, and that's it for us. Luke, back to you.
Awesome. That's it for Sprint Demos 4.65.0. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Some cool features, great improvements. RC was cut today, so the train has left the station. We'll be QAing next week. We've pushed back the target release date to end of week next week, so it'll always be 1 week from Sprint Demos is our target release date. Give us a little bit more time for QA. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Have a good rest of your Friday and enjoy your weekend.
Bye, everyone.